Chapter 1 Summary. Tobias Crane thought the medical exam on Korvath Station would be routine, just another scan before his cargo hauling license renewal. But when the alien doctor, Vess, runs his DNA through the analyzer, she goes completely still, her long ears pressed flat against her skull in what he'll later learn is pure terror. The holographic display shows his genetic code spiraling in patterns that shouldn't exist, laced with markers from a species called the architects. Beings who vanished 50,000 years ago and were believed to have seeded life across multiple galaxies before their mysterious extinction. Vess stammers that finding architect DNA in a living being is impossible. Their genetic material degrades after 10,000 years. Yet here it is, active and integrated into Tobias's cells as if it belongs there. She asks him questions he can't answer. Where he's from, who his parents were, if he's ever experienced anything unusual. Tobias, a third-generation asteroid miner from Earth's belt colonies, has no answers. He's nobody special, just a guy who hauls ice and keeps to himself. But Vess's hands are shaking as she runs the scan 3 more times, and each time the results are the same. Chapter 2 Summary. Vess locks down the medical bay, her scientific curiosity warring with protocol that demands she report this discovery immediately to the Galactic Council. She explains through nervous rambling that the architects are considered myth by some, religion by others. But their ruins dot hundreds of worlds, all abandoned in a single moment across the galaxy. No one knows what killed them or where they went, but every spacefaring species owes their existence to the genetic templates the architects left behind. Tobias makes a joke about being cosmically important while living in a shipping container, and Vess laughs despite herself, her ears relaxing slightly. She shows him scans of architect ruins, massive structures that still hum with power after millennia biological technology that predates modern science by epochs. Then she shows him what his DNA can do. When she exposes a sample to an architect artifact fragment she keeps for research, the dormant technology awakens, responding to his genetic signature like a key in a lock. They watch in stunned silence as the fragment projects star maps that haven't been seen in recorded history. Vess whispers that if the council learns about him, he'll disappear into a research facility forever. But before either can decide what to do, the station's alarms blare. Someone else has detected the architect technology activation. Chapter 3 Summary. Armed Korvathi security forces surround the medical bay, but they're not station personnel. They're council archivists, zealots who believe the architects will return to judge the galaxy and who have spent centuries hunting for any trace of the ancient species. Their leader demands Vess hand over the contaminated specimen for immediate transfer to their temple laboratory. Vess refuses, positioning herself between them and Tobias, declaring him her patient under medical sanctuary laws. The standoff is tense until Tobias, frustrated and confused, touches the wall, and the entire station shudders. Lights flicker, then stabilize in colors that don't exist in modern technology. The station itself is awakening, responding to his presence, and Vess realizes with horror that Korvath Station isn't just built near architect ruins, it's built into one. For centuries, they've been living inside dormant architect technology, and Tobias just woke it up. The archivists fall to their knees in religious fervor while the station's AI begins speaking in a language no one has heard in 50 millennia. Vess grabs Tobias and runs because she understands something the zealots don't. The architects didn't go extinct. They transformed themselves, encoding their consciousness into their own DNA and scattering it across the species they created, waiting for the right moment to wake up. Chapter 4 Summary. They hide in the station's old maintenance tunnels, while the awakened architect technology spreads through Korvath like a living thing, rewriting systems and revealing hidden chambers that have been sealed since before the current species evolved. Vess explains her theory. The architects didn't die, they chose to become dormant, distributing fragments of their consciousness across millions of worlds, waiting to be reconstituted when their scattered children were ready. Tobias is a throwback, a random genetic recombination that brought enough architect DNA together in one person to trigger the awakening. He asks what happens now, and Vess admits she doesn't know. The station is transforming around them, and he can feel it responding to his thoughts, almost reading his mind. Then he understands something that makes him laugh despite the chaos. The architects didn't leave because they failed or died. They left because they succeeded. They wanted to create life that could evolve independently, so they removed themselves from the equation, trusting their children to grow up without divine parents watching over them. But they left a failsafe, DNA fragments that could reawaken if their children ever faced extinction-level threats. Tobias takes Vess's hand and walks back toward the central chamber where the archivists and station authorities have gathered. The station reshapes itself around them, and when they emerge, Tobias speaks in a voice that carries harmonics of 50,000 years. The architects aren't gods. They were parents who trusted you to grow up. I'm just a reminder that you're not alone, and you never were. The architect consciousness fragments in his DNA don't take over or demand worship. They offer knowledge, the accumulated wisdom of an ancient species, freely given to their descendants. Vess watches as Tobias negotiates with the council and the archivists, not as a human or an architect, but as a bridge between past and future. Later, after the crisis settles and the galaxy begins to absorb the revelation that the architects live on in all of them, Vess asks what he'll do now. Tobias grins and says he's still got a cargo hauling license to renew, but he might need a medical officer for his ship. Someone who doesn't mind that her captain occasionally activates ancient alien technology by accident. Vess's ears perk up with amusement, and she accepts. Chapter 1. Tobias Crane had been through exactly 47 medical scans in his 32 years, most of them mandatory renewals for his cargo hauling license, and every single one had been boring enough to put him to sleep. So when the Korvathi doctor's ears went flat against her skull and her hands started trembling over the holographic display, he figured the scanner had glitched. Korvath Station wasn't exactly known for maintaining top-tier equipment. Problem? He asked from the examination platform, still wearing the ridiculous paper gown they'd given him. The doctor, her name badge read Vess in both Korvathi script and standard, didn't answer. She was staring at his DNA helix spinning in the air between them, her usually violet complexion going pale gray. "This isn't possible," she whispered. Her ears, those long, elegant things that swept back from her temples, were twitching in a rhythm Tobias had learned meant extreme distress. "Run it again, run it 3 times. Lady, I've got a shipment of ice heading for Mars in 6 hours. Can we speed this up?" But Vess wasn't listening. She ran the scan again, and each time her expression grew more horrified. Finally, she turned to him, and Tobias saw something in her eyes that made his joke die in his throat. Fear, pure, absolute fear. "Where are you from?" she demanded. "Your parents, grandparents, where were they born?" "Earth's belt colonies. My family's been mining asteroids for 3 generations. Why? Have you ever experienced anything unusual? Heard voices, seen things that weren't there, had technology respond to you in unexpected ways?" Tobias laughed. "I live in a shipping container and eat recycled protein paste. The most unusual thing in my life is when the coffee maker works." But Vess had pulled up another display, this one showing markers in his DNA highlighted in colors that pulsed with urgency. "Okay, you're scaring me now. What's wrong with my genes?" "Nothing's wrong," Vess said quietly. "That's the problem. You're carrying active architect DNA, and that should be impossible. The architects have been extinct for 50,000 years. Chapter 2. Vess locked the medical bay doors with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, and Tobias watched her pace back and forth while trying to process words that made no sense. Architects. Extinct, impossible. She kept saying these things like they should mean something to him, but he was just a cargo hauler who barely passed xenobiology in school. "You need to explain this like I'm 5, he said finally. "Who are the architects, and why does having their DNA make you look like you've seen a ghost?" Vess stopped pacing and pulled up a holographic image of ruins. Massive structures that twisted through space in geometries that hurt to look at. The architects seeded life across the galaxy. Every species we know of, including humans and Korvathi, evolved from genetic templates they left behind before they vanished. Their technology still works after 50 millennia. Their ruins dot hundreds of worlds, but they disappeared in a single moment everywhere all at once. No one knows why. And I've got their DNA because that's what's impossible. Architect genetic material degrades after 10,000 years. It can't remain active, can't integrate with living cells. Yet yours has perfectly as if it's supposed to be there. She pulled a small crystalline object from a secured drawer. "This is an architect artifact fragment. It's been dead since we found it. Watch." She placed a drop of Tobias's blood on the crystal, and the entire medical bay filled with light. The fragment sang with power, projecting star maps that rotated through three-dimensional space, showing systems and routes that Tobias had never seen on any modern chart. Vess's ears were straight up now, quivering with scientific excitement that warred with her fear. "You're a key," she breathed. "You can activate their technology. Do you understand what this means?" "That I'm about to become a very interesting lab specimen," Tobias guessed. The star maps were beautiful, hypnotic, and he felt a strange pull toward them as if they were trying to tell him something important. "The Galactic Council will never let you," Vess started, but station alarms cut her off, blaring through the medical bay with urgent red lights. Chapter 3. The armed Corvathi who burst through the medical bay doors weren't wearing station security uniforms. Their armor was older, ceremonial, covered in symbols Tobias recognized from history vids. The mark of the council archivists, religious fanatics who believed the architects would return to judge the galaxy. Their leader pointed a weapon that hummed with the same frequency as the crystal fragment at Tobias. "Hand over the contaminated specimen," the archivist commanded. "The council must determine if this abomination is a sign or a threat." "He's my patient," Vess snapped, stepping between them despite being completely unarmed. "Medical sanctuary laws protect him from removal without consent. The laws of mortals do not apply to matters of the divine." Tobias was getting tired of people talking about him like he wasn't there. "Hey, abomination here has a name and a cargo deadline. Can we all just calm down?" And he reached out to steady himself against the wall, frustrated and confused, and more than a little scared. The moment his palm touched the metal, everything changed. The station shuddered. Every light in the medical bay flickered out, then came back in colors Tobias had never seen before, shades that shouldn't exist that made his eyes water. The walls began to glow with patterns that spread like living circuitry, and the floor beneath them thrummed with power that had been sleeping for longer than civilization. Vess stared at him in horror. "Oh no! Oh no, Tobias, what did you do?" "I touched a wall. People touch walls. That's a normal thing." But the archivists had fallen to their knees, their weapons forgotten, chanting in a language Tobias somehow understood even though he'd never heard it before. The station AI's voice came over the speakers, but it was wrong, older, deeper, speaking in harmonics that made his bones vibrate. "Corvath Station isn't just built near architect ruins," Vess said slowly, her scientific mind racing ahead of the terror. "It's built inside one. You didn't just activate a fragment, Tobias. You woke up the entire station." Chapter 4. The maintenance tunnels were older than Tobias had realized, their walls covered in dormant technology that was now lighting up as they ran past. Vess pulled him through passages that seemed to reshape themselves around them, opening shortcuts that hadn't existed moments before. Behind them, they could hear the station transforming, revealing chambers that had been sealed since before any current species evolved. "They're not extinct," Vess panted as they stopped to catch their breath in what looked like an ancient observation deck. Through the transparent walls, Tobias could see the station reconfiguring itself, growing, awakening. The architects encoded their consciousness into DNA and scattered it across the species they created. "You're not just carrying their genes, you're carrying pieces of their actual minds." "That's insane," Tobias said, but even as he spoke, he felt something vast stirring in his thoughts, ancient knowledge pressing against the edges of his awareness. "I'm just a cargo hauler. I haul ice. I eat terrible food. I'm nobody." "You're a throwback, a random genetic lottery that brought enough architect fragments together to trigger the awakening." Vess grabbed his shoulders. "Tobias, they didn't die. They chose to become dormant, distributing themselves across millions of worlds, waiting until their children were ready." The station AI spoke again, and this time Tobias understood what it was really saying. Not a warning or a threat, but a greeting. A parent checking on children who'd grown up in their absence. He started laughing because the absurdity of it all was too much. "They left because they succeeded," he said, and the knowledge came from somewhere deeper than memory. "They wanted us to evolve independently. So they removed themselves, trusting us to grow up alone. But they left fail-safes, genetic fragments that could wake up if we ever needed them." He took Vess's hand and walked back toward the central chamber, the station reshaping itself to accommodate them. The archivists and station authorities had gathered there, weapons drawn, prayers spoken, scientists recording everything. Tobias stepped into the center, and when he spoke, His voice carried harmonics that had been silent for 50,000 years. The architects aren't gods. They were parents who trusted you to grow up. I'm just a reminder that you're not alone. You never were. The knowledge in his DNA didn't take over or demand worship. It offered itself freely. Science, art, philosophy, all the accumulated wisdom of an ancient species, available to anyone who wanted to learn. Tobias negotiated with the council and the archivists not as human or architect, but as something new, a bridge between what was and what could be. Later, after the galaxy began processing the revelation that the architects lived on in all of them, Vess found Tobias in the station's new observation deck, watching stars through windows that showed realities beyond normal space. "What now?" she asked. "I still need to renew my hauling license," he said with a grin. "Though I might need a medical officer for my ship, someone who doesn't panic when the captain accidentally activates 50,000-year-old alien technology." Vess's ears perked up with amusement. "I suppose I could tolerate that, for science." "For science," Tobias agreed, and together they walked toward a future neither species would face alone. The alien female doctor froze while examining my DNA. "This isn't possible,"